I'm standing here this morning in front of the 75th anniversary IOL Experience that the ESCRS have put together to show the passage of Harold Ridley's invention through the traumas that he had, how there were successes, but rather more failures than successes. There's some wonderful exhibits. So let's have a wander around and we'll see how we do. So what you can see here on my left is a film of the Hawker Hurricane. It, along with the Supermarine Spitfire, was the backbone of the Battle of Britain. We know that pilots would be shot down, and one of them is the gentleman over here, Gordon Cleaver, Mouse Cleaver as he was known. He came back from the second mission, and just as he was flying over Winchester, there was a Bf-109 Messerschmitt coming out of the sun and bounced him. And one of the 20mm cannon shells shattered the perspex canopy, and he got bits going into both eyes. He then went into hospital. He had 18 operations on his eyes and face, and many of the Air Force ophthalmologists saw eyes like this with bits of perspex in there, but not causing any inflammation. As Ridley said, the great thing about the plastic material was that if it didn't cause any problems by movement, it was pretty much inert. And this is Mouse Cleaver's eye. You can see here this piece of perspex in the cornea, not causing any problems. So what finally was the trigger? It was a medical student, St Thomas's Hospital in London, who was watching Ridley do a cataract extraction. He saw the lens or the nucleus come out, and he said to Mr. Ridley, "So you've taken the lens out, are you going to replace it with another one?" And Ridley said, "Well, it's not the usual thing, but I'll think about it," effectively. And he realized that he wanted to go forward, who then contacted John Holt at Imperial Chemical Industries, where PMMA had actually been developed in the 30s. And they put together the idea of what they were going to do by way of making a lens. I'm standing behind a perspex case now, which has a very important document in it, which is the operating theatre logbook from St Thomas's Hospital. And if you look at the 29th of November, 1949, you'll see that this lady had an extracapsular procedure on her left eye, and then the 8th of February 1950, she had a left lenticular graft. And this is why we think that probably the first operation was done in 2 stages. I'm now standing in the mock-up of what the operating theatre might well have been like in Ridley's day. The table itself was quite crude. There was obviously no operating microscope. Their anesthesia would be cocaine drops, 4%. That's all. And it really wasn't until some years later that operating microscopes came along, and then people had to change the way they operated. Ridley was wearing this in order to do his surgery. That was his microscope. So really what he was doing demonstrated what a fine, skilled surgeon he was, because this was the only thing he could have to help him. Harold Ridley decided initially that he wanted to keep things secret until he had some reasonable results. Unfortunately, one of his implanted patients went to another ophthalmologist called Ridley, and therefore the cat was well and truly out of the bag. And what this had was the effect on Ridley was to make him have to go public. So he went to the Oxford Ophthalmological Congress, which is a very prestigious congress. In 1951, he brought 2 patients for his colleagues to see. Duke Elder refused point blank to have anything to do with him. And he stormed out of the lecture theatre, followed by his acolytes, followed by an American professor, and then the trouble really got going. But ultimately, as things went on and results started to get better, both with Peter Choice's Mark 8 lens and the Binkhorst 4-loop and then the 2-loop, things gradually started to improve. But it's still only in the mid-1970s that lenses went back into the posterior chamber, first John Pierce, then Steve Shearing, and as they say, the rest is history. What I'm standing in front of now are some photographs of Ridley lenses that have been in for over 50 years when these pictures were taken. So it wasn't entirely bad. I think the really sad thing about it is that people didn't actually look at why the lenses were failing. They didn't realize or didn't think about it, that the reason that the Ridley lenses were not doing as well as they might was simply because they were too heavy and they didn't have any haptics. It took some time before haptics came into to being, another 20 odd years, from the original implantation through all the trials and tribulations, the early successes, further failures, and ultimately a realization that Ridley's invention was here to stay because it was really doing something good. It was recognized that this was a scientific breakthrough. Ridley's greatest achievement, as far as he was concerned, was to be elected to the Royal Society in London. And it is really prestigious. You do not get elected to this unless you've done something special. What I'm standing in front of is further reason for Ridley to be honoured. And the first of these was in Vienna at the ESCRS meeting, where he was given the Grand Medal of Merit. This had never been awarded before, and it was a wonderful occasion. I remember it well. And then, a little bit after this, he was awarded a knighthood. Ridley decided that he wanted to give something back over and above what he did with his patients, and he founded the Ridley Foundation in 1967. His current project is in the high Himalayas in Nepal to train the locals to do cataract surgery. ESCRS have agreed to further funding for the Ridley Foundation. Harold Ridley's legacy and those who came after him that designed the lenses that failed ultimately led to things working. And this continues today. Every time I come to an ESCRS meeting, companies produce new lenses with new optics, trying to, as much as possible, give our patients spectacle independence. I really hope that you realize what the history did and what you can do, and hope that you will be inspired to do something like this from what you see here on my left.